By 30 years old, I was making great money working with companies that you actually may have heard of. By every external metric, I had won. I also genuinely didn't want to be alive most mornings. And here's what actually rebuilt me, and it wasn't business coaching. This isn't a strategy video. This isn't about tactics or frameworks or productivity hacks. And if you want that, leave. This is the story behind every other video on this channel. It is what happens when you achieve everything that you wanted and realize that you've been building on the wrong foundation the whole time. And I'm telling you this because the diagnosis underneath it was identical to what most of you are experiencing right now. And if you're gonna do the work to rebuild your entire mental infrastructure, you need to know it's possible. Way back when I was first starting out, I worked in a really cool, swanky London office with a rooftop bar, really cool clients, Google, Diageo, Pepsi, and a bunch of other companies that were like big company names. I was fresh out of uni and I thought I was the guy. I was not. I was a child and I was a stupid kid at that. By every external measure, in that moment, I was winning. I was on a decent salary straight out of uni, prestigious clients, good, cool office. I got to take people to the rooftop bar and be Jack the Lad. I was working with really, really smart people. And I could tell people what I did at dinner parties and when I was out with my parents or my friends, and their faces would go, wow, he did really well. He got into consulting straight out of uni. And yet I was dying on the inside. Here's what I didn't understand then. I'd fused my identity completely with my output. I wasn't David who worked in consulting. I was a consultant called David. And I wasn't even a consultant. I was an analyst. I was the lowest rung on the corporate ladder. Every project success felt like proof that I, the person, existed. Every client win felt like some temporary salvation from the voice in my head that said I wasn't enough. This isn't real consulting. It's just brand and marketing consulting. Every promotion that I was vying for, that I desperately wanted more than everything else, in reality would just buy myself another few months of not having to face the fundamental emptiness of not actually wanting to do the thing anymore. But the thing about identity-based achievement is it's never enough. Every win just raises the bar for the next one. The first time that you impress a client, you feel amazing. The 10th time, it's just Tuesday. You just need bigger clients. You just need bigger projects. You need bigger wins to get that same hit. I was on a treadmill that was speeding up and I couldn't figure out how to get off. The promotion that I was going for would have given me an extra $5,000 in the bank and probably an extra 20 hours a week of work. It was during a project for $1 billion FMCG brand. I'd built a market sizing model that was genuinely the best work I'd ever done. Months of work, sophisticated analysis, really high praise from everyone around me. We presented it to the client. They loved it. They implemented it. It worked. My reward, well done. That's it. Well done. It was like doing homework at school. And I remember sitting at home, coming to terms with this, thinking, if this is all I'm getting and it isn't enough, what am I actually working towards? I pushed that down and I said, you've been ungrateful. You don't need affirmation from other people. You should just be happy with doing good work because that's how work was supposed to feel. I told myself that this was just the reality that I lived in. What I didn't realize was my entire life leading up to that point was a storied history of the same thing. My body had broken down over and over and over again. It was a foot infection that put me in hospital for 2 weeks when I was 16 years old. Then, TMI, intermittent testicular torsion that I lasted for 9 months when I was about 21. Then, arterial thoracic outlet syndrome. None of these things will mean anything to you if you aren't a medic, but each time the doctors would run tests, find basically nothing conclusive, and tell me that this is all in your head, there's not actually a problem here. Maybe you're overstressed. Maybe you just need to relax a bit. There's nothing really going on. But there was something wrong with me. My nervous system had been in fight or flight for years. All of this led to me in consulting, my body trying to tell me something that my mind refused to hear. The way I was living was unsustainable. So I started, unfortunately, developing what I now recognize as depression and anxiety, but I just called it being tired or having a rough patch. And there was a point where I was sat in A&E at 23 years old with heart palpitations thinking I was having a heart attack because of this stuff. I couldn't admit that the life that I'd worked so hard to build was making me miserable, and I didn't want to actually live it. A few years later, I did a firewalking experience, and it was genuinely one of the best experiences of my life. I came out of it on cloud 9 thinking I could accomplish anything. But within a week, I'd basically forgotten all about it and was back to my baseline. And that's when I realized that peak experiences don't create lasting change. Environment dependent transformation doesn't survive re entry. You can't meditate your way out of a fundamentally broken operating system. The real breaking point came literally a few days later. I won't euphemize this because euphemizing it would rob it of its power. I had a genuine spiritual encounter that changed everything. I know how this is going to sound, so humor me. I had a demon exorcised out of me. And I know that some of you just rolled your eyes or started questioning my credibility, potentially even more than you had prior to this point. But I'm not soft selling it because soft selling it would be dishonest. There was something in me that wasn't me, something that had been feeding on my anger, my emptiness, my desperate need to prove myself. And when it left, the silence was deafening. For the first time in my adult life, my mind was quiet. And that experience meant that I came back to Christ after 10 years of basically being a godless heathen. And I don't mean I started going to church more or like reading the Bible. I completely 180'd my life because of it. Now, caveat, I'm not saying that you need to go through an exorcism to get there. That was just what I needed for me. The rebuild wasn't actually all that dramatic. It wasn't, a Rocky montage of inspirational moments. It was daily, mundane, and it was the same thing over and over again, right? It was learning to wake up and give my day to God before I gave it to work. It was learning to sit in a quiet room without reaching for my phone or trying to escape the discomfort of my own thoughts. It was essentially learning to separate my worth from my output, which meant the identity that I'd spent a decade building, I had to grieve and let go of. Ultimately, I had to learn that the voice that had been driving me for years, the voice that I said that I wasn't good enough, that I needed to do more, that I had to be more, achieve more, it wasn't actually my voice. It was just programming that I'd inherited and never questioned. And most importantly, it was learning that I didn't have to earn my place in the world. I already had it, not because of what I'd achieved, but because of who I was created to be. Here's what changed when the foundation changed. Not less ambition, just different fuel. I still wanted to win, but I wasn't running from anything anymore. I was running towards something. What I call the performance gospel had taught me that my worth equaled my output and that achievement, enough achievement, would finally make me whole. The actual gospel taught me I was already whole and that I could create from that wholeness rather than from the wound. It's the same activities, but it's a completely different operating system. So you fast forward today, and I get to work with founders and entrepreneurs who are exactly where I was, successful on paper, but ultimately empty inside. And they're wondering why nothing they ever achieve feels like enough. I get to go to places like the British Virgin Islands and get on $30 million yachts, not because I'm chasing status and I'm flexing it, but because the work that I do now flows from who I am rather than who I'm trying to prove that I am. I wake up most mornings genuinely grateful to be alive, and that is a big change from where I used to be. Not because, my circumstances are different, but because I'm no longer at war with myself. The voice that used to run a constant tally of everything I haven't done yet, which makes me a bad person. Yeah, it's still there sometimes, but I know where it comes from now. And I know that it's not the truth, and I know what and who replaced it. I'm telling you this because if you're watching this video, there is a good chance that you're where I was. You are, successful by external measures, but you're empty by the internal ones that you actually care about. You are wondering why nothing that you ever achieve feels like enough. And I'm telling you this because the diagnosis underneath it is always the same. You are building on the wrong foundation. And I'm telling you this because rebuilding is possible. It's not easy necessarily, but it is possible. It can be extraordinarily quick and permanent. And the work that I do now, the book, Choice Psychology, the Says Who technique, the 3 levels framework, all of it came from having to rebuild my own operating system from the ground up. You do not have to hit the same bottom that I hit, and I pray that you don't. You do not have to wait until your body breaks down or your spirit breaks open. You can choose to rebuild now while you still have the energy and the resources to do it consciously and proactively. If you want to understand the enemy underneath all of this, the belief system that was secretly running my life and is probably running yours too, you have to watch my video on the performance gospel. That is the operating system that you need to rip out and replace. And once you name it, you can choose something different.